Guys, it's Taiga from the Common Striders, here with my Genesis deck profile for Standard. Um, a fight video should have gone up with me versus our team member Jupiter playing OTT, and his Oracle Tank deck profile should have gone up before that video. So, well, here's my deck profile. So to start off, the main unit of the deck, Oracle Queen Himiko. She's your grade 3, she's your main grade 3 of the deck, amazing unit. Her skill is Act. You can Soul Blast 5, once a turn, Soul Blast 5. Put a draw trigger or a critical trigger that's in your soul to the bottom of your deck and activate that trigger effect equal to the grade of your opponent's Vanguard. So if your opponent's Vanguard, you're only going to do that when your opponent has that grade 3, so that way you get the most out of the effect. So you would put a critical trigger to the bottom of the deck after Soul Blasting the cost, and basically you can give 3 of your units a crit and 3 of your units plus 10k because you're activating that trigger 3 times. So now that doesn't go towards your drive check, so then you still get the drive check when she attacks. That's the perfect part. The fact that you can do a crit or a draw trigger is the main thing. If you're not going to be able to finish off your opponent, you want to use the draw trigger so that way you add 3 extra cards to your hand for guarding or for more plays, because this is an act skill, so you can do it in the main phase before you start attacking. And if you feel like, oh, well, my opponent's at 4 damage or they're at 5, I need a crit to end the game here, activating that trigger 3 times to give all your units in the front row plus a crit is just a way to end the game right then and there. So that's Himiko. Next, I run 3 copies of Eternal Goddess Iwanagahime. Her skill is Act also. She's another grade 3 with a Force marker. This is a Force clan. Her skill is Act, Soul Blast 3, you draw a card, and then you can place a card from your hand into the soul. And she gets the power of that unit's shield doubled. So, she's a nice combo piece with Himiko when you need to get a draw trigger or a critical trigger into the soul. Or she's just good on her own, because you can use a nice combo I like to do is, yes, it would get rid of a heal trigger from my hand, but use her skill, put a heal trigger into the soul. That's a card in your soul that you might need for soul blasting later, but not only that, she'll get 40,000 power because a heal trigger shield is 20k. So, by putting a heal trigger in the soul, she'll get 40,000 power and be a really big attack. Not only that, she gets you a draw. So, she's a great unit. I run her at 3 because I need room for other units in this deck, but she's still an amazing unit, and at 3 I think she's fine. Next, I run 2 copies of Goddess of the Milky Way. Pelonia, I think her name is. I can't really pronounce it. She's not in focus, but that doesn't matter. Her skill is, there you go. Her skill is when she's placed, she's a grade 3 without a marker, but when she's placed on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, you can just look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 into the soul, and the other 2 go back on top in any order you like. Now, a good thing about her with Iwanagahime is, when you use her skill, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck, like I said. And you can put a draw trigger or a regular unit, doesn't matter, whatever you want into the soul. And then you put the other 2 cards on top. So if you look at the top 3 and see a trigger, a unit that you don't really care about, and another unit that you might want in your hand, you can go soul charge the unit I don't care about, or soul charge the trigger that I want to put into the soul. And then if there's another trigger there, you can set it up like, okay, my first card is above it, is the unit that I want in my hand, and the second one is a trigger check. So using that with Iwanagahime, you can go use her skill to Soul Blast, and then you draw the card, so you'll draw that card you put on top, and then you know what your drive check is. She also works with other units in the deck. She's a great unit, great rear guard. You really don't want her as your Vanguard, so if you start off with her, you want to put her back in the deck, just to not have to ride a unit without a marker. Alright, moving on. Next, I run 3 copies of Battle Maiden Sahohime. Now, this is the grade 2 lineup. Sahohime skill is when she's placed, Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 2. Then, you draw 2 cards and put a card from your hand into the soul, and she gives that unit shield as power. So, she's like Iwanagahime here, but the only difference is she costs the Counter Blast where she doesn't, but she Soul Blasts less than her. But she draws you 2 while she draws you 1. But she gets double the power, whereas she just gets their power irregularly. So if you put a heal trigger in the soul on her effect, she'll get 20 instead of the 40 like she gets doubled. But she draws you 2 extra cards, and she still puts a card from your hand in the soul that you want in the soul. With the way that Himiko works, you want crits or draws in your soul. So, you know, that's a good way to run with. She's a good at 3. A lot of people run her at 4 because she's the triple R of the grade 2 lineup in this deck. But I only run her at 3 because the fact that she soul blasts me when I need my soul for my other units, I don't like it as much. But there are other cards in this deck that work around with that. So let's move on. 3 of you are done. Next, I run 4 copies. Here we go. 4 copies of Battle Maiden Shitaharu Hime. Her skill is act on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. You may counterblast 1 and reduce the next time you soul blast by 2, and then one of your other units get plus 3,000 power. Now, how she works is, as you just saw, we have a lot of soul blast cards. Himiko soul blast 5, Saho Hime soul blast 2, Iwanaga Hime soul blast 3, and the fact that she can reduce your next soul blast is amazing. Like, as previously, before Standard, Genesis' whole thing was they would soul charge on call, and soul charge on this, and soul charge on that. Whereas now they've changed the deck to being a little less soul chargy, but you still get a lot of cards in your soul, but just in different methods. So with this, Shitaharu Hime lowers the cost of when you have the soul blast. So now if you use her skill, Saho Hime is just a counter blast, Iwanagi is just 1 soul blast, and Himiko is just a soul blast of 3 instead of 5. So the cost goes down. Secondly, she also gives a unit plus 3k. When you're playing in a game like Vanguard, you need that extra little bit of buff. Whereas if you're attacking a unit that's, you're attacking the opponent's Vanguard. If I have another grade 2 on rear guard and I give it plus 3, now it can hit a force Vanguard of 13 to 13. So she's a great unit. Run her at 4 to reduce the cost. She's an amazing unit. So moving on. Next is one of my favorite units in this deck. He is a common, but he is the main guy that I like. This is Strongbow, the Starry Knight, Ulysses. Now, Ulysses' skill is only on rear guard, so you really don't want to ride him because his skill is amazing. His skill is at the end of the battle that he attacked, you move him into the soul, you draw a card, and then you soul charge a card. So the great part about that is the fact of the matter is you don't even have to hit with him. Like, he's not an on-hit skill. He's at the end of the battle skill. So my opponent will ask me if I have any on-hit skills, and his deck doesn't have any on-hit skills, and it's amazing. But at the end of his attack, I'll just move him into the soul. I get a draw and an extra soul charge. So that means I get basically 2, since he's moving himself into the soul, I get 2 cards into the soul, and I draw. So he is an amazing unit. Run him at 4 because you always want that extra soul charge and draw from a unit that also swung at your opponent Vanguard. And since this is forced, he can be 20,000 swinging at the Vanguard. Combined with Himiko's skill, use her skill to give him another plus 10k from the trigger effects, he's 30,000 swinging at the Vanguard, and then you get a skill even if he hits or not. So that's just perfect. The last of the grade 2s, I run 2 copies of Deity of Shepherds Valos. Now, this is a 10k shield, no skill, grade 2. Now, you might be wondering, why do I run this? Some clans run them because they need the extra guard. In this deck, you really don't run her for the extra guard. The real reason you run her is if you've been listening and looking at all the units we have for the grade 2 lineup, Saho Hime, Shitaharu Hime, and Ulysses. Ulysses is a rear guard skill. Saho Hime is also a rear guard skill, and Shitaharu Hime is a vanguard or rear guard skill, which is great. But most of the times, you always want these units on the field. This is a rear guard skill, you want these 2 to be on rear guard. And this skill is it's an act skill, so you can keep using it over and over again. So you usually want those units to stay. So the reason I run 2 of this unit is because it's my initial ride target. If I can't get it, it's okay. It'll show up later to be a 10k guard or a swing. But if I see it as my first grade 2, I'm happy because that means all my other rear guards are going to be able to go off and stay on the field whenever I need them to. So that's her purpose in the deck. Moving on to the grade 1s. One of the best grade 1s in this deck, Battle Maiden Mikahara Hime. Her skill is on place to reduce the next time you soul blast by 3. So, unlike Shitaharu, she's not an act skill. So I have to try to manage when I'm going to call her or not. But the fact that she reduces it by 3 means that Iwanaga Hime is free now. It means that she's free. Saho is already free because she's cost of 2, whereas this reduces it by 3, so she's free now besides just the counter blast. And Himiko is now -3. So if you combo that with Shitsuharu Hime and her, if you play both of them, if you use her axe skill to counterblast and you call her and you call Mikahari here, it's reduced by 5, which means when you get those two together, Himiko is now free. You just don't pay any cost now, and you just send to the bottom of the deck the trigger that you want to activate. So she's an amazing unit. Run her at 4 because you need to see that skill to go off every time you want to use it to reduce your cost. Next great one is Witch of Cat's Cumin here. Witch of Cat's Cumin skill is when she's placed, you counterblast 1 and you rest her. Then you can choose one of these effects. You can either put a card from your drop zone into the soul, or return a unit on your field back to your hand. Now, it's like, at first I was thinking, why would I ever choose the skill to not put a card from my drop zone in the soul? When I'm guarding, I might guard with a critical trigger or a draw trigger perfect guard, to so that that's in the drop zone, I can move it to the soul with her skill. But then I thought about it. When you look at this deck, you have Mikahari here. Mikahari is an on-play skill. So if you don't see Shitsuharu and you want to reduce Himiko's skill, you can call Mikahari from your hand, reduce it, call Witch of Cat's Cumin, bounce Mikahari back to your hand, and then play her again, and then she sees on placed, it activates again. So that way, you get -6, so you don't have to pay a cost for Himiko again. So that skill of, like, that usefulness of either being, I need to put a draw trigger or a crit from my drop zone into the soul, or I just want to use one of my own play skills again. That's what makes Witch of Cat's Cumin a 4 of, because she can make you use other skills that you already use on play skills again. It recycles them. So you need her at 4. My last great one is Swift Runner of the Clear Skies Achilles. I run him at 3. Now he is most of the times my ideal ride target for grade 1 because his skill isn't huge, but it helps, and that's why he's here. His skill is Act, move him into the soul, put this unit from rear guard into the soul, and give 3 of your units plus 3k. Now, 3k again can still make your 10ks hit force numbers, so that's an amazing skill right there. But the fact that he also moves himself to the soul can get rid of a spot on your field that's already been used up, and it can power up your units and put a card in your soul that you need the soul blast for later. He's a 3 of because his skill is okay, but really don't need that many of him. You don't need a 4th copy because it would mess with the deck's like playstyle a little bit, and having him just to be that extra resource of, hey, I need that extra 1 soul. Now, like a situation I've come across is me having literally 1 card in soul. I've only have 1 card in soul, and I want to use Himiko's skill. I can place Mikahari Hime to reduce it. I can reduce it by 3, and then that means I have the Soul Blast 2. Now, where am I going to get that Soul Blast at 2? I can call Witch of Cat's Cumin to put one of those triggers from my drop zone back into the soul. Bam, that's 2, but I still need that extra 1 because the skill is put the unit from soul to the bottom. So I need 3 cards in soul to get it off. Him right here, he can move him, call him, move him to the soul, power up 3 rear guards just for the fun of it. But then you got that cost for Himiko right then and there. Alright, on to the trigger lineup. I run 4 Battle Maiden Kokuri Hime. She's a critical trigger. And I run 2 Cyber Taiga. Now I run 6 crit in this deck, but you'll see why I don't run 8. Like most Force clans run 8, and Protect clans run 8. But I run 4 draw PGs. This is Goddess of the Self-Sacrifice, Kushinada. And I run 2 Talisman Angels. Now, why do I run two regular draw triggers? Well, since Himiko's skill activates on crits or on critical triggers or draw triggers, I want to see those type of triggers the most. And since I need those draw trigger skills to go off, I want to run 6 and 6 to have an even balance of when I'm going to use the skill or not. So which one I ever want to use, I'll have a decent number. Or sometimes I'll have 2 draw triggers in my hand. I'll have these 2 and want to use either a Saho Hime or Iwanaga Hime skill to put a draw trigger into the soul. Well, I want to keep the draw trigger perfect guard so I can perfect guard, so this is a better option to move to the soul instead of that one. Or, hey, I need to drop a card for guarding, and it's the perfect guard. It's a 5k shield, so it could help. Lastly, 4 heal triggers. You need to heal. Like I said, you can move heal triggers from your hand into the soul. It lowers your guarding chances, but it increases your Vanguard's power. If Iwanaga Hime's your Vanguard, it increases her power exponentially. And, hey, sometimes she could be on rear guard and you get that skill up because she's Vanguard or rear guard circle. You can use Himiko's skill to give her the crit and then use her skill to move this to the soul. Now she's plus 50,000 power in a critical and she can do so much damage if your opponent doesn't have perfect guards. The last card in the deck is right here. Aiming for the Stars Artemis is the starter. I am kind of bummed that some clans got extra starters, whereas Genesis here only got Aiming for the Star Artemis because Genesis has a Ride Chain other variant for the standard build, and they're all Artemises. But since I'm not running Artemis, why do I want my starter to be an Artemis? And that's why I was like, why don't we get an extra starter? Whereas units like, decks like, I guess it's just for the aesthetic of it. It really doesn't matter. They all just have, every starter has on when rolled upon draw a card, so it doesn't really matter, but I just like the aesthetic of having a different starter. And there were a lot of other Genesis cards that could have gotten the treatment, but I'm okay with that. And like I said, this is a Force clan, so here are my Force markers. I have 1 Dragonic Overlord Force, 1 Phantom Blaster Dragon, a Great Dayusha, an Aichi, I have an Aichi, and I have a Kai, and then 2 other Force markers. Well, so that is my Genesis deck profile. You'll see it in a fight. Hope you got some pointers. Hope you got some tips. Or you liked it pretty much. It's just a really nice kind of play. It's really powerful. You'll see it in a fight against Jupiter. See how it plays out. One problem I've seen with the deck is if you're going in a long fight, you can deck out because of the draw power you do have in this deck. You have Ulysses that can draw you a card. Saho Hime draws you 2. Iwanaga draws you 1. So you're going to be drawing, and then if you use Himiko, you'll draw 3. So you do draw a lot of cards in this deck. So that's a problem you could deck out. But the deck is still fun. It's amazing. It's strong, and yeah, more to come. So with that being said, Striders out.